Like a garden snail leaves a trail behind, our story snail leaves a tail behind. Share our stories and you may find you can tell a story too.
Well, hello everyone! Now I'm sure you remember that last week was National Poetry Day here in the UK. But if you really liked poetry, then you are in for a treat this month because October is National Poetry Month. And poems are really good for us storytellers. They can help us to remember parts of stories. Maybe you can think of little poems in stories that you know, like Little Pig, let me come in, or Mirror, mirror on the wall. Do you know how those little poems end? But it's not just the start of National Poetry Month today, it's also the start of a special week, World Space Week, which is extra good because the story I have for you today comes from Mexico, and it's a story with a little bit of poetry in it, but it's also a story about two of the most famous characters from space. I'm talking about the sun and the moon. You see, in Mexico, 1,000 or so years ago, they knew that the sun and the moon really liked each other. They were the best of friends. They would chat about everything, they would work together, they would play together, a little bit like Neighbour Nell and Neighbour Nick from the story a couple of weeks ago. But actually, the sun secretly felt like he fancied the moon. In fact, he kind of felt like he wanted the moon to be his wife. And after a little while, he couldn't keep it a secret any longer. He had to get down on his knees in front of the moon and ask her to marry him. The thing is, the moon didn't really fancy the sun. I mean, she liked him, and she thought he was a bit hot, but well, really, she just didn't think he would make a good husband. The thing is, she didn't want to just say no to him, because if she did that, she knew it was going to ruin their friendship, and she really did value that friendship. So what the moon needed was a way to say no to the sun without actually looking like she was saying no. And then the moon had an idea. You see, all those hundreds of years ago, the moon had a little bit of magic. And she'd worked out a way to use that magic to say no to the sun without actually saying no. What she said to him was, "Okay, I will marry you on one condition. You have to find something for me to wear which fits me perfectly." Well, the sun thought that was going to be easy. So he got out his measuring tape and he got her measurements. Looks like she is exactly size 3. So we're going to need to remember that. The moon is exactly size 3. You got that? 3. So the moon went off to sleep, and the sun went in search of a dress that would be exactly size... That's right, size 3. We really need to remember that, size 3. Now the sun was a bit magic as well. He would be able to make a dress of the perfect size out of absolutely anything. And he thought a dress made out of flowers would be particularly beautiful. So he went searching across the earth, gathering up loads and loads of flowers to turn them into a dress. He began to wiggle his fingers like this. You can do this too, to cast a magic spell over those flowers and turn them into a dress that was exactly size... Remember what I was saying earlier about how poems help you remember things? Well, one of the ways they do that is with words that rhyme. And a word that rhymes with the right size for the moon's dress would be me. So in this spell, the sun will use the word me. And at the end of the spell, I'd like to hear all of you say the correct size for the dress. Maybe when I put my hand by my ear like this. So, wiggle your fingers, here comes the magic spell. All these flowers make for me a pretty dress, which is size... And poof! There in front of the sun was a dress, a beautiful multicoloured dress that was exactly size 3. The sun took it to the moon, and she went to try it on, but it began to rip and tear. It seemed to be far too small. The sun was really confused about this because, well, there's no way she could have become that much bigger in just one night. I mean, even if she ate nothing but cakes all of that time, you wouldn't get that big that quickly. So had he measured her a bit wrong? He must have done. Let's just measure her again. What? Size 6? 6 looks nothing like a 3. How he managed to get that wrong? Clearly the sun hadn't found something that fit her perfectly, so he wasn't going to be able to marry her. But he was determined to marry her, so now he was going to find something that would fit exactly size 6. Okay, that's the new size we've got to remember, size 6. Okay, 6. And as the moon went off to sleep, the sun went in search of something else for her to wear. Maybe it wasn't the size that was the problem. Maybe it was the fact it was a dress. Maybe what he needed to do was find something like a skirt that was exactly size... Yeah. Now once again, because he was magic, the sun looked all over the earth and saw some sparkling diamonds. He thought they would make the perfect skirt. So he gathered them up and began to wiggle his fingers over them, ready to cast a spell, to make them a skirt that was exactly size... Yeah, I think we could do the rhyming thing here again, couldn't we? And, well, we had me for 3, so let's see, if we take 6 and we put an M in front of that, we get mix, don't we? So let's put that into a little poem to make a magic spell for the sun here. I'll say the first line with mix, and you can finish off the last line of the poem with the correct size for the moon's skirt. Are you ready? Then here we go. With all these diamonds in the mix, I'll make a skirt which is size... And poof! There was a skirt of exactly size 6. And the sun took it to the moon, who tried to fit it on, but started to rip and tear again. It seemed like actually the skirt was too small. The sun couldn't believe it. He was sure that she had been a size 6. So he got out the measure again. Let's just have a look. What? So she's a size 9. Now 9 and 6 look a little bit the same. It's like a 9 is an upside down 6, but was that really an easy mistake to make? The sun was feeling a little bit confused as the moon went off to sleep again. But he wasn't just confused, he was also really sad now, because it seemed he could not find something that would fit the moon perfectly. And that meant that he wasn't going to get to marry her. They wouldn't be able to get to enjoy their wedding day. But thinking about their wedding, thinking about what it was he really wanted to share with the moon, gave the sun another idea. You see, there is something that brides wear on wedding days which fit them perfectly, no matter how small or big they are. Something that just sort of drapes over their head, down in front of their face, and actually trails off behind them, sometimes for a really, really long way. I'm talking, of course, about the wedding veil. So the sun decided now he knew what would fit her perfectly. And as he looked down on the earth, he noticed the sea. He thought the sea would make a beautiful veil, the perfect veil. So he began to cast his magic spell. Wiggle your fingers. And I wonder if you can work out the word that is going to make the rhyme at the end of this magic spell. See if you can join in the right place. I'll make a veil from the sea to fit size 9, size 6, or... And boom! There in front of the sun was a gorgeous wedding veil. And the sun carried it to the moon, where she placed it on her head. It draped down in front of her face, and it carried on for a long way after her, just like a veil should. So the moon had to admit the sun had managed to find something that did fit her perfectly. And actually, now that she saw how clever the sun could be, she decided maybe he would make a good husband after all. So they did get married, and they moved into the same patch of sky together, which is actually where they have been ever since. And to remember how they ended up getting married, the moon keeps on changing shape in the sky. She's kept her veil on too, which is why when you go down to the beach, you might notice the sea sometimes is quite far away, and sometimes is quite close to you. That's because it's still attached to that veil, and it's following the moon as she travels around the world. Now I wonder, is that story true? The Mexicans certainly thought it was. Well, the Mexicans from hundreds and hundreds of years ago anyway, when they first made up that story. They saw the moon changing shape in the sky, and they made up that story to explain it. But of course, if you asked a Mexican today, they'd probably give you a different answer, because today we have lots of scientific instruments that can tell us exactly why the moon changes shape in the sky, or why the sea goes backwards and forwards at the beach, depending on where the moon is around the world. I'm sure if you chat with your friends and your teachers and your grown-ups back at home, you'll be able to find the real reason behind the moon changing shape or the sea going backwards and forwards. But does that mean we don't need the story anymore? Maybe there's something else we can learn from that story. Perhaps you could start National Poetry Month and World Space Week not by finding out the truth behind the moon's changing shape, but also by thinking about what else that story can teach us. Right now though, it only remains for me to say cheerio, and I hope to hear your story soon. So, cheerio, and I hope to hear your story soon.